Look at this. We are back. Welcome to Flames Nation Live. It's been too long, friends. Sasha first in. Matt, Jordan, Jeffrey with us as well. I tried to do one before I headed east for Europe for a couple of weeks. I tried to do one, but for whatever reason, the technical stuff was not working. I could not figure it out, so I had to scrap it. But here we are. We're back. And once again, we've got absolute ridiculous amounts of stuff to talk about. Goodness, it has been a busy week. Beaucoup de sujets, if I were speaking still in France. A lot of subjects. Let's first of all tell you, Flames Nation Live, still brought to you by our good friends at DoorDash. You can still use that promo code. We've been telling you about the promo code for more than a year now. It still works. FN Live DD. If you're a first-time user, go download the app, create the account, use that promo code. You could get yourself 25% off your first delivery and free delivery. Not too bad. 25% off your first order and the free delivery. Well, there is part of the news that we saw hit on Thursday. A Sean Monahan trade to Montreal. And, of course, the significant Nazem Kadri news as well. Nazem Kadri signed by the Calgary Flames to a 7-year contract. And to make room for that $7 million AAV, Sean Monahan dealt to the Montreal Canadiens, along with a conditional first-round pick with conditions unlike anything we've ever seen before. And the Flames get future considerations back in return. Obviously, we're talking about a straight-up salary dump. That is the news of what has happened in the last 24, 48 hours for the Calgary Flames. And now we react to it. Let's start with Kadri. Let's get your thoughts. Let's get your comments in on the live chat right now. I'll give you my feel on Kadri. I think it's a home run signing. I think he fits perfectly with what the Calgary Flames are trying to do. I think that him as a 1B center behind Elias Lindholm is a perfect fit. I think his snarl, I think the way that he plays the game, I think his two-way acumen, I think his defensive side of the game, his play driving aspect is going to be a perfect fit with Daryl Sutter and this Calgary Flames team. I think that when you think about Nazem Kadri, you put him in my mind up there with one of the 3, 4, 5, 6 best play driving two-way centers in the National Hockey League. With Lindholm, with Barkov, with Bergeron, with Couturier. That's the category Nazem Kadri is in, and that's the player the Flames just got. Oh, and he just won the Stanley Cup. Pretty good stuff. And for the Flames to go from where they were, and I said this on Flames Talk on Sportsnet 960 The Fan this week after the Kadri signing, for the Flames to go from where they were with two catastrophic pieces of news in July. Matthew Tkachuk, thanks but no thanks, I'm not signing. And then before that, Johnny Gaudreau, thanks but no thanks, I'm not signing. Oh, and I've already signed in Columbus. Two catastrophic pieces of news, followed by what Brad Treliving and the Flames have turned it into. The Tkachuk trade, the Huberdeau re-signing, now the Nazem Kadri signing. I think Uyghur will sign at some point. Incredible turnaround. And as Nazem Kadri said today, like, what a rebound. It could have been a catastrophic, devastating, trajectory-changing, in a bad way summer for the Calgary Flames. And instead, I think they're actually slightly better than they were last year. When I think about the subtractions of Gaudreau and the subtractions of Tkachuk and Goodbranson, those are the three guys that are kind of gone, and the infusion of Kadri, Huberdeau, and Uyghur to add to your Vezina Trophy finalist goalie and your Selke Trophy number one center, Selke Trophy finalist number one center. Like, it's tough to really argue about how strong this offseason has been. And you may not agree that they're better. I think they're slightly better. I think that they're just as deep or comparably deep at forward, especially with Kadri in now. And I think they're better on defense. But even if you think they're just kind of the same, or even you think they're slightly worse, the fact that they are not worlds worse is a really, really impressive thing. And I think it's been a masterclass offseason from the general manager. I really do. We've been critical of Brad Treliving in the past. And you know what? When you're a GM in the NHL, criticism goes along with the territory. But this guy has put on a masterclass performance of how to respond to adversity, respond to crappy things that are out of your control happening, not take it lying down, and then turn it into what he's turned it into. Pretty darn good stuff. Let's dive in with some of our comments. Who do we have with us? I already told you about Jeff, Jordan, Matt, Sasha, Eugene, Tiffany with us. Daniel says, Pat, is it me, or is the team looking way better now than before Johnny and Chucky? What do you think? Yeah, I don't know if it's way better, but I think it's. I look at them as slightly better. Mike asks how Paris was. Outstanding. And yes, Eric did enjoy the trip. It was unbelievable. Mike says, so who are you putting on the first and second lines? Well, right now, I still think they're going to add somebody. I still think there's another forward in the mix. And there's a lot of different names you could throw out there. Whether it's Evan Rodriguez, Phil Kessel, Sonny Milano, Paul Stastny, I just think there's another forward that they can add to the mix and might add to the mix. And if they do that, I think it changes the conversation a little bit. Right now, though, I'm going on pairings, or at least I'm going on a Huberdeau, Lindholm forward pair. I'm putting those two together. Ideally for me, I'm probably still keeping Coleman, Mangiapane, and Backlund together. Although I think that you could, that's negotiable. Like I'd be interested in a Mangiapane Kadri pair, that's for sure. Toffoli Kadri interesting to me. Right now, that's a tough question to ask, Mike. The only thing that I'm pretty certain of in my eyes is I'm putting Lindholm and Huberdeau together. That's the one thing that I'm pretty adamant on. Eugene says center position hasn't looked this good in eons. Irv says, will they try to get another top six winger? I don't know if it'll be a top six winger, but I think it will be I think that we'll be talking about another middle six winger. I think there's a good chance of that happening. Chris says, welcome back, Pat. Roller coaster month, but I'm super excited for the season to get started. Josh says 7x7 for Kadri's excellent. If things go sideways, it's very movable. What else we got here at 960, 960? We got a couple of Oilers fans trolling. Have at her on the live chat. What else we got here? David says the problem is Kadri had one good season, came off 2 years at the Avs, with year one being 36 points in 51 games, and year two with 32. That's why I'm skeptical. I'm not really all that worried about Kadri's points. I'm really not. Do I think Kadri's going to be a 100-point player in Calgary? Probably not. He was on pace for 100 in Colorado, but that's not what I'm thinking is what we're going to be talking about in Calgary. I think that we're talking about a two-way center that's probably good over an 82-game campaign for somewhere in the 60-point range, and just elite two-way play. That's what Kadri is. And if he's to get 100 points again, awesome. But if that doesn't happen, I still think this is a really, really good signing. What else we got here? Jesse asked, do you think a Lucic trade is inevitable? Less so now because of the Monahan trade. I'm not saying that Lucic couldn't still be traded, but less so now that deal has been made. Obviously, the Monahan trade was directly to make room for Nazem Kadri and directly to kind of make that work. It was almost dollar in, dollar out with about a $600,000 offset. Yes, they had to give up a first-round pick to make that work, but I don't think so. I don't think it's inevitable anyway. I still think it could happen, but I don't think it's inevitable. If they want to make another significant addition, they might have to, but I don't think it's inevitable the same way that maybe it felt like it was prior to the news of this week with Kadri and Monahan. More on the live chat as we continue. Just wanted to make sure that we told you about this for the first time on FlamesTalk. I know that this has been all over the rest of the Nation Network podcasts, but the Montana's legendary all-you-can-eat ribs promotion is on now every day until the end of the summer. We know Montana's the barbecue expert in Canada. They smoke their ribs in-house daily. They sauce them up, fire the grill up. They make them to order. Come into any of Montana's location, Calgary, Southern Alberta, for all you can eat ribs, and use the hashtag if you go Get Montana's Messy. If you do that, use that hashtag. You can win weekly prizes. Once again, use the hashtag Get Montana's Messy. All you can eat ribs is on now 7 days a week at Montana's until the end of the summer. Back to the live chat we go. As we continue here on Flames Nation Live. Matt says, looks to me the team's offense will be better balanced with the new additions, not so top-heavy like it was with Johnny and Tkachuk. I agree with that. John says, trade a D or two for JT Miller. I don't know if that'll get it done, but damn, I think JT Miller would be a great fit in Calgary. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I do know the Canucks are looking to trade him, and I do know he'd be a really good fit in Calgary. Eugene says, where do we see Weegar coming in AAV in term? I think it's probably fair if we're talking a long-term deal, which I think is going to be the goal for the Flames. I think somewhere in the 6-year range and somewhere between 6-7 million, depending, probably a little higher if you're going 7 years. You can maybe get it around 6.5 if it's 6, maybe closer to 7 if it's a 7-year deal. I think somewhere in that range is probably fair for Weegar. So 6 years at 6.25, 6 years at 6.5, something like that is kind of the ballpark that I'm thinking when it comes to Weegar's deal. I think that's going to happen. I know there is. I've been told by like multiple people that I consider to be quite trustworthy on these things, that Weegar's got a high desire to sign in Calgary, and obviously the Flames wouldn't have acquired him if they didn't have a desire to sign him too. So I think at some point that's going to happen. I'm pretty confident that's going to happen, and that's kind of the range I think we could be talking about. Irv says they're so deep on D, and so it looks like they may trade one. Who do you think they would move? I wonder, the two that come to mind, I wonder about Juuso. I just think Valimaki could really use a change of scenery at this point. I know it has not been a great last couple of years, so you may not be getting great value for him, but I wonder about Juuso Valimaki and whether or not they deal him. That could help in terms of alleviating some of the logjam. Shillington, I still wonder about, even though he's signed. Those would be the two that I wonder about, but I think in terms of a change of scenery, you're not probably going to get a ton of value at this point, but I do wonder a little bit about if Valimaki. This says, comparing the 3 players they brought in as opposed to the 3 that left, the Flames are actually up 4 points. That's true. Jay says, ride Lucic 1 more year, then see if you can re-sign him for a cheap deal, team-friendly deal at the end. It's kind of where I'm at. I mean, if you need to do something, then maybe you can move out Lucic, but I don't know if you have to. Now, they've got about $2.5 million in salary, and if that's the case, if they want to add a bigger name, they might have to still move some money around. But, I mean, I think they could sign one of the free agent names out there and probably get that player in at somewhere around $2.5 million on an AAV. So, potentially that could happen. Jesse asks, thoughts on Pelche fitting in the top 9? Look, I love Jacob Pelche, and I think he's going to be a really, really good player, and I think he's a nice prospect for the Flames to have, and I think it was good the Flames didn't have to give him up in the Monahan deal. Great that they didn't have to give him up in the Monahan deal. In saying all that, I think it is super premature to pencil him in as an everyday forward next year. He has 0 NHL games. The jump from the American League to the NHL is a big one, especially when you're talking about playing a top 9 or top 6 role. I'm not saying he can't do it, and I'm not saying they shouldn't give him the opportunity to do it. And I'm not saying he can't have a good training camp, but to pen him in or pencil him in as an everyday NHLer to start the season next year, I just think it's a little premature. I think that, I guess what I would say is, if that doesn't happen, and if Pelche starts the season in the American League, oh well, it's not a big deal. It's not a bad thing. I am, especially with as win now as the Flames are right now, let these guys develop. Let these guys stay in the American League longer than they need to. if they could sign Rodriguez for 1 year and that pushes Pelche out of the lineup to start the season and makes it so he has to have a second year in the American League, I got no problem with that. Better to be ready to play in the NHL and over season in the American League than otherwise. So if Pelche makes the team on merit, awesome. He deserves it. But if it ends up going another direction, I don't think that's a problem at all. I really don't. I think that he's a great prospect, and I hope that he plays in the NHL in the near future. But if he doesn't start the year in the NHL, that's okay. This says Huberdeau, Lindholm, Mangiapane, or Huberdeau, Kadri, Mangiapane, or pair 2 and 2 rather than stack one line. I kind of look at it as depending on if they can add one more player. I kind of look at it more as spreading it out a little bit. It's going to be really interesting and plenty of time to talk about that as we continue on throughout the offseason. Great stuff. Good to be back on Flames Nation Live. Going to try doing these once a week until the season starts and then back to 2 times a week once we're into the season. But good to be back. Thanks for spending a little time with me on a Friday night. One more time, Flames Nation Live, brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. Go download the app. Go create the account and then use the promo code FNLiveDD for 25% off your first order and free delivery. Hey, have yourself a wonderful weekend. Maybe there'll be more Flames news over the weekend. If that's the case, you know that we'll have an emergency Flames Talk podcast on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. You know that Pike and Shane will do an emergency Flames Nation radio podcast. We'll see. We'll be all over at flamesnation.ca regardless. Be well. Have a great weekend. Talk to you next week. It's been Flames Nation Live. Stay safe. Stay kind to one another. It's good to be back. It's been Flames Nation Live brought to you by DoorDash. I'm Pat. Have a great weekend.